I've been a Sangha member here for 10 years, and it's really a delight to come here and to be a part of the Sangha. And I've been studying Buddhism since the early 70s, and have come through many different kinds of travels and whatnot. And as some of you know, I trained as a modern dancer for 10 years and danced professionally before going to graduate school. So art is a big deal, it's a big part of my life, and studying Dharma has been a big part of my life. And now I'm 71 years old, and I've come to this place, and I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful to be here. I'm grateful to be in the Sangha. I'm grateful to have all of you and the people that I know here and have come to connect with as what it means to be in the Sangha. You know, I'm really grateful.
Good.
Okay. Thank you. So I was wondering, you know, as I was preparing for this talk, you know, I had these different kinds of fantasies and ideas. I don't know if other people, when they're like thinking about like doing something like this, you know, come across any kinds of whimsical ideas. So I had this fanciful idea one day. I was driving in the car, and I thought, well, gee, wouldn't it be kind of interesting if somebody did like Dharma humor, stand-up Dharma, you know, as a part of just to break with convention, you know, because everything seems so formal. So if you have an expectation and you break the expectation, then there's the opportunity for something fresh to happen. So it was very whimsical. It was a silly idea in my head. So, but I actually carried it forward a little bit. So I thought I would share that with you as I begin my Dharma talk today. So imagine this, if you will. There's like, this guy comes up to a monk, a senior monk, and so he says to him, hey, what do you do with your free time? And the monk looked at him and was like, free time? What's free time? I mean, what are you talking about? Oh, you know, the kind of time when you don't have to worry about anything, you don't have to do anything, you don't have any responsibilities. You know, free time. So then the monk just started laughing uproariously. Anyway, that was my intro, fantasy kind of idea. So I decided not to tell you that story and to tell you this one instead as part of the introduction for this talk today. So I recalled, I was sitting the other day and I recalled this Tao story as I was thinking about like doing this talk today. And what I recalled was the old story about like how when somebody goes to an archery competition, you know, and if they're going to be just shooting free, you know, like kind of relaxed and, you know, just feeling quite at ease, it's really easy to hit the target and to like, be very precise. But the story goes like, let a guy have to stand and shoot for a gold buckle, and all of a sudden he can't see the target. So, over the past years being with the Won Temple here, I've consistently been drawn to the first three items of the essential dharmas of daily practice. So, as you might recall, disturbances, delusions, and wrongdoings arise from sensory conditions. So why is this important? So I've been practicing clinical psychology now for nearly 40 years, and I've come to realize that suffering arises in particular situations, certain contexts of sensory conditions. Using myself as an example here, several weeks ago I made some comments following a Dharma talk. I felt uneasy and worried, and sensed I may have said too much or spoken too long, so I became concerned that Brian would judge me. I walked out into the lobby and Brian made no eye contact with me, which I immediately interpreted as his being displeased with me. So here's a set of sensory conditions. They struck me in a particular manner that caused a disturbance in me. I became worried. An illusion arose. Brian was upset with me, which resulted in my wrongdoing. I left the temple without clearing it up with Brian. So I was left to introspect and look at what is this disturbance in me? Why? So what's up with that? So I had to spend time looking at what my attachments were. It became a process for me to really look at what is that disturbance? Why is that important? So for those who heard MJ's talk a few weeks back, you may recall the story she told about becoming emotionally distraught when a fellow minister lodged a complaint about her being unfair, favoring certain students over others. MJ shared with us that the event caused her great consternation and distress. So disturbances arise in the context of sensory conditions. Illusions arise in the context of sensory conditions. Wrongdoings arise in the context of sensory conditions. As you may recall, the first noble truth of Buddhism states that life is suffering, which actually is interpreted to mean dukkha is unsatisfactory. So life is basically unsatisfactory. There's something unsatisfactory. The reason for a person to seek a spiritual path is to alleviate suffering. The same is true of when somebody comes to psychotherapy. Something in their life is unsatisfactory and the person is suffering, which motivates the search for the end of suffering. Unless one becomes, the only other reason I've been told that somebody comes to the spiritual life or doing this kind of introspective journeying work is because you become so enamored. My analyst told me years ago that the only other reason besides suffering that somebody comes to this work is because they become so enchanted with the fact, he used the analogy of when in the fairy tale, when a young boy or the young man sees a deer with antlers, with a golden ring around it running into the forest, and he becomes so enchanted that he has to go after the buck. He can't rest. So the only other reason somebody comes to this work is because they can't rest. Something causes them to want to engage in this quest. So those are the only two reasons I know. So what's arising now in the interface between modern psychotherapy, practice and theory, and Buddhism is how people become identified with sub-personalities in their ego. They get trapped by a separate sense of self. People become so identified with the automatic reactions in their personalities that they are no longer able to realize that it's an illusion. The person becomes trapped in the illusion. They are unable to recognize the role they've been playing due to their being totally identified with the process. So the analogy I like in this context is the notion of a fish swimming in water. So being immersed in water, a fish has no awareness of being in water because, water is the entire medium that it's kind of being in, so it has no idea or sense of being in this medium, which is sort of like us being in the medium of our reality. The way we perceive and the way we identify with things is just the way it is. So the only time a fish knows that it's in a particular kind of medium is when suddenly it's yanked out and it can't get its breath. Then it knows it's been in something. So what awakens us? So for most of us, most of the time, we are caught up in patterns which happen automatically in predictable ways in certain sensory contexts. The world is how we perceive it. We react in repetitive, automatic, habitual ways, which maintains our attachments. We become more interested in being right than in being happy. Like the fish in water, we are typically unable to perceive the illusion. We are unconscious. Given that the majority of the time we simply do what we do without awareness, being unconscious, we are motivated to maintain these repetitive patterns, and they become our karma. With karma, we become identified with the constructs of our reality and believe they are real. Become identified with the illusion, which maintains our suffering. It's through our sensory experiences that disruptions arise. The experience of unsatisfactoriness. It's in this context of sensory experiences that disturbance arise, and it's in the context of sensory experiences that illusions arise, and it's in the context of sensory experiences that wrongdoings arise. Attending to these conditions allows us to pay attention on purpose in a particular way, mindfully via meditation, which enables us to uncover how suffering arises and the methods for alleviating suffering. So Do Seon, along with centuries of Buddhist practitioners, point to the possible end of human suffering. With the end of suffering comes the end of greed, hatred, and delusion. With the end of greed, hatred, and delusion comes the possibility of peace, love, and unity. The wholeness that can heal the planet. The experience of suffering is our opportunity to awaken. I was recently told that it's through the cracks that the light gets in. That our pain is the path to liberation. Whether in psychotherapy or spiritual growth evolution, disturbances that arise in the context of sensory conditions gives us the opportunity to pay attention, to become conscious of the unconscious, which enables us to alter our destinies, our karma.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Barry? Go ahead.
I want to thank you for your Dharma talk and for allowing me to stand there like that. You have always brought wisdom to this Sangha. Always. For many years now. And I appreciate not just your Dharma talks and what you give to us, but your friendship has been quite sincere. And it's a model for me. All right?
It's a model for me.
And thank you for your Dharma talk.
Yeah, it fills me with a sense of gratitude, and I'm kind of tearing up because there's a connection here that I value greatly. You know, I was driving through the neighborhood one day and I saw there was a Buddhist temple, and I said, you know, I always wanted to be a part of this Sangha. I think I'm going to check this place out. And so I'm really grateful to be here and to be amongst you and to have you as friendships and to have your companionship. Any other comments or questions that anyone has? Was it clear? I mean, did it make sense? Did it hang together? Yeah, no? It hung together? Okay.
Barry?
Yes?
Can I take you a little bit beyond what you talked about with the question?
Uh-huh.
So you gave us a clear idea of how you see where we got and what our situation is, or what your situation is. I'd like to personalize it a little bit. How do you see your method for then taking the next step and relieving that situation that you've been describing to us? What do you do?
So I found it's in line with this talk today, Brian, which is that most people, most of the time, as I understand it, doing the work I do, is that people don't want to feel uncomfortable. They want to turn away from things that make them feel uncomfortable, and they want to avoid it. So I found for myself and the people I work with is like developing the wherewithal and the courage to face the things you're most terrified about. The things that make you most uncomfortable, that you wouldn't want to share with any other human being, that's the very stuff you need to share. And most of the time people are so uncomfortable doing that because they're hiding behind various types of masks and identities that they feel anxiety, but they don't know how really to make that transition. So I hold myself to the same standard. You know, I have to get honest with myself, and I have to be honest with the people that I work with, and coming to that place of their own honesty, a place where they're scared, and to be able to enter into that place with calmness, clarity, openness. I use my meditative practice and the use of mindfulness to be sitting steady in places where you feel most uncomfortable, so the person then can face that and integrate that so they can feel some sense of freedom.
Thank you. Anything else from anyone? Desert.
So the story, that was about becoming disturbed.
About what?
Becoming disturbed, the comments.
About becoming disturbed, sensory conditions?
About the specific story that was given about the comment. Was it too much? Was it too little?
Oh.
Brian's story.
Yeah.
So how was it that you arrived, though, at the awareness that that's what was going on?
I had to be totally honest with myself that I felt really uncomfortable. There was a disturbance. So that's what I think is important about this talk today, and what about the Dharmas of daily practice, is that it alerts us that we have to pay attention. When I start to feel uneasy, I know it. I need to call myself on it. I need to say, yeah, there it is. Oh boy, here it comes again. So that I'm aware and I tune into that. So I use it as I was saying at the end of the talk, the cracks is where the light comes in. Those are my cracks. So like where the light comes into me is like I have to face that. And that's how I came to it. And so I was aware of that. And I was aware when I went into the lobby and Brian was looking down at his shoes. He was tying his shoes. And he didn't even acknowledge me. He didn't even acknowledge me. Shit. Wow. So I felt it. That's how I knew. That's how I knew. And I had to be clear about that.
So what I heard was that there were some visual cues. What else? What was the feeling? What made the awareness?
I was tense in my body. I was nervous. I felt uneasy. I wasn't walking relaxed in a relaxed way. There was a certain tension in my body that alerted me to the fact that I was not at ease. So I had dis-ease, a lack of ease. That's how I track it. That's how I track it with myself.
Thank you, Barry. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.